The bottle was still open on the floor next to her. Industrial floor cleaner, the kind with a skull on the warning label. My 5-year-old daughter was kneeling beside it, scrubbing my mother's kitchen tile with a rag half her size. Her palms were raw. Her dress was soaked. She didn't look up when I walked in. She didn't even flinch. She'd been trained not to. My mother called it helping. My sister called it natural. My brother-in-law said it built emotional intelligence. None of them knew that the woman they'd just handed a mop and a bucket to her daughter owned the house they were standing in. 5 days later, at a birthday party with 53 guests and a rented sound system, they found out. If you've ever been treated like the family ATM while they treated your child like the help, hit subscribe. My name is Amara, and this is what my family did to my little girl. For 34 years, I have been the engine that kept my family running while they treated me like the exhaust. I grew up in a 3-bedroom brick colonial in southwest Atlanta, the kind of house where the lawn was always mowed because my mother cared deeply about what the neighbors thought, and the refrigerator was always stocked because I started paying for groceries when I was 22. I was the oldest daughter. Denise, my younger sister, was the baby. And in my mother Vivian's universe, those two facts explained everything why Denise deserved more and why I was expected to provide it. I became a real estate attorney. Not the kind who shows houses and pops champagne at closings, the kind who buys distressed mortgage notes from banks, restructures defaulted loans, and forecloses on properties when borrowers stop paying. I spent my days acquiring other people's debts. I was very good at it. It was precise, methodical work that required patience and a high tolerance for people who lied about money. In other words, it was perfect training for dealing with my family. I had my daughter Naya when I was 29. Her father left before she could hold her head up, and I never once chased him for an explanation. I didn't have time. I had a newborn, a mortgage of my own, and a family that treated my bank account like a community. Well, everyone drew water. Nobody ever refilled it. The comparison was always there, clean and sharp as a paper cut. When I turned 10, my mother bought a sheet cake from the Kroger bakery and invited 3 of my cousins. When Denise turned 10, there was a bounce house in the backyard and 25 kids eating catered barbecue. When I earned a full academic scholarship to Emory, my mother said, "Good. That saves us money." When Denise failed her entrance exams, my mother wrote a check for private school without blinking. When I graduated from law school, top 15% of my class, Vivian didn't come. She had a hair appointment. When Denise got engaged to Derek, my mother flew across 3 states and stayed a week to help plan the party. When I gave birth to Naya alone in a delivery room at Mercy General, my mother sent a text message. It said, "Congrats. Send pics when you get home." When Denise gave birth to Madison, Vivian moved into her guest room for 2 weeks. She cooked every meal, did every load of laundry, and posted 47 photos to Facebook with the caption, "Nothing in this world like being a grandmother." And every single month on the 1st, I deposited $3,500 into a joint account I shared with my mother. It was supposed to cover property taxes, home insurance, and basic maintenance on their house. It was supposed to keep them afloat. I never asked what happened to the money after it landed. I didn't want to know, because knowing would have forced me to stop, and stopping would have meant admitting that my mother would never love me the way I needed her to. I was 34 years old, still waiting for Vivian to see me. Ridiculous. But I kept going. I kept depositing. I kept showing up to Sunday dinners where Denise's plate was served first, and my daughter sat in a folding chair while Madison and Harper got the cushioned seats. I kept swallowing the small cruelties because I believed one thing with the desperate stubbornness of a child pressing her face against a locked window. Every girl deserves a grandmother who braids her hair and tells her she's beautiful. Naya deserved that, even if I never got it myself. Some mornings, I'd stand in my kitchen waiting for the Keurig to finish watching Naya eat her cereal at the counter. She'd finish, slide off the stool, carry her bowl to the sink, wipe down the counter with a paper towel, and push her chair back in, all without being asked. She was 5. I used to think she was just an unusually neat child. I didn't know yet what that neatness actually meant. That Tuesday, Naya's regular nanny called in sick. I had a meeting with a client at 2 that I couldn't reschedule a portfolio acquisition worth 7 figures. I needed 3 hours. I scrolled through my phone, running out of options, and did the thing I'd done 100 times before. I called my mother. I called. Vivian answered on the second ring. Her voice was warm and bright, the voice she used when she wanted something or when she was performing for an audience, even an audience of one. Of course, baby. Bring my granddaughter over. We'll bake cookies. I packed Naya's yellow backpack with her coloring books, 2 juice boxes, and her favorite stuffed rabbit. I dropped her off at the front door. Vivian smiled, took Naya's hand, and waved me off. I drove away. I went to my meeting. I closed the deal. Then I drove back to pick up my daughter and I made a phone call I will regret for the rest of my life. The house was quiet. That was the first wrong thing. My mother's house was never quiet. I turned the key and pushed the front door open. The hallway smelled like pine sol and something chemical, not the lemon cleaner Vivian usually kept under the sink, but something sharper. Industrial. The television was off. No gospel music from the kitchen radio. No voices. Then I heard it. A soft rhythmic sound, wet fabric dragging across tile. I walked past the entryway, past the framed family photos on the wall. Denise's wedding, Madison's baptism, Harper's first birthday. Not a single picture of Naya, and turned the corner into the kitchen. My body stopped before my brain caught up. Naya was on the floor. Not sitting. Not playing. Kneeling. Both bare knees pressed into the cold ceramic tile, her skin angry and red from the pressure. Her little yellow sundress, the one I'd ironed that morning, was soaked from the hem to her waist, clinging to her small body. Her hands gripped a rag that was nearly half her size, dark with grime, and she was pulling it across the tile in slow, careful strokes. Beside her sat a plastic bucket of gray water and an open bottle of industrial floor cleaner, the kind with a poison warning label on the side. Her palms were raw, pink and swollen where the chemicals had bitten into her skin. She wasn't crying. She wasn't making a sound. Her face was blank, focused, obedient, the face of a child who had learned that silence was safer than protest. That was the part that broke me, not the bucket, not the chemicals. The silence. 5 years old, and my daughter had already been taught that her comfort didn't matter. 6 feet away on the living room sofa, Madison and Harper lounged against the cushions. Madison was 10, Harper was 8. They wore matching boutique dresses, the ones Vivian bought with my money, and shared an iPad propped between them. On the screen, I could see the camera app was open. They'd been filming. Harper giggled and pointed at Naya without looking up. I dropped my bag. It hit the hardwood with a crack that made both girls flinch. I didn't speak to them. I crossed the kitchen in 3 steps, lifted Naya off the floor, and pulled her against my chest. Her wet dress soaked through my blouse instantly. I didn't care. Her small arms locked around my neck, and I felt her heartbeat, fast, shallow, like a trapped bird hammering against my collarbone. Put her down. Vivian's voice cut from the patio door. She walked in holding a glass of sweet tea, her church group smile still half fixed on her face. She looked at me like I was interrupting her afternoon. She wanted to help. Nobody forced her. Some children are just naturally helpful. She is 5 years old, I said. My voice came out low, flat. The kind of quiet that people who know me have learned to be afraid of. Her knees are raw. Her hands are burned. You gave her industrial chemicals. Vivian waved her hand, the same gesture she used to dismiss anything that inconvenienced her. Oh, stop it. A little cleaning never hurt anyone. I raised you the same way, and you turned out fine. Before I could answer, Denise appeared from the hallway. 31 years old, blowing on freshly painted nails, a shade of coral that probably cost more than Naya's entire preschool wardrobe. She looked at me, looked at Naya clinging to my neck, and smiled. She looks quite natural on her knees, actually. Denise tilted her head, examining my daughter the way someone examines a stain on a carpet. Maybe she'll grow up to be a housekeeper. Somebody in this family should learn a useful skill. The words hung in the air. I watched my sister's mouth form them, watched her smile after she said them, and I filed the sentence in a place inside my chest where I keep things that will never be forgiven. Heavy footsteps from the stairs. Derek appeared, Denise's husband, 36, wearing stained sweatpants and a wrinkled vintage tee. He was holding a craft IPA from the six-pack I'd paid for last week. He leaned against the doorframe, surveyed the scene, and adopted the expression of a man about to deliver a TED Talk to a room full of people who didn't ask. Amara, I say this with love. He took a slow sip. You're raising Naya with a victim mentality. Children who learn to serve develop higher emotional intelligence. It's neuroscience. Kids from single-mother homes, especially in your demographic, they need structure. A male authority figure. Naya needs to learn that the world doesn't owe her comfort. I stared at him. This man who had burned through $60,000 of my money on a podcast, nobody listened to a retreat that got him sued, and a drop-shipping store with a one-star average was explaining child psychology to me while drinking my beer in a house I secretly owned. I said nothing. I held my daughter tighter. Vivian set her glass down on the island. Tomorrow is the first Amara. I expect $3,500 in my account by 9. The property taxes are due, and Derek needs help with his business expenses this month. She crossed her arms. If you have a problem with how I run my house, you can leave, but don't you dare forget who keeps this family together. I looked at the granite countertops, the stainless steel refrigerator, the hardwood floors my daughter had just been scrubbing on her bare knees. Under your roof, I said softly. Yes. Vivian lifted her chin. My roof. My rules. And if you don't like it, take your little girl and don't come back. I kissed the top of Naya's head. Her hair smelled like pine sol and sweat, and the faintest trace of the strawberry shampoo I'd used that morning already almost gone. Don't hold your breath for that deposit, Vivian. I walked out the front door. I strapped Naya into her car seat. I wiped the chemical residue from her palms with a wet wipe, gentle as I could, watching her flinch when the cloth touched the raw spots. I buckled her in. I closed the door. Then I sat in the driver's seat, connected my phone to the Bluetooth, and called the only number that mattered. My real estate attorney. If you've ever had to protect your child from the very people who were supposed to love them, hit subscribe, because this story is just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, because I was calculating. I sat at my kitchen table after Naya went to bed, laptop open, 2 monitors glowing in the dark. On one screen, the corporate filing for Naya Grace Holdings, LLC NGH Capital on paper, registered in Delaware, untraceable to my name, without a deep forensic search. On the other, 48 months of bank statements showing $3,500 deposits flowing into a joint checking account, and not 1 cent flowing out toward any mortgage servicer. 4 years ago, my parents hit bottom. My father, Earl, had made a series of terrible investments, a timeshare in Destin, a used car lot, that never opened a cryptocurrency wallet he couldn't remember the password to. My mother spent what was left on maintaining appearances, new furniture for the living room, matching outfits for Denise's girls, a $6,000 donation to Grace Community Church so her name would appear on the benefactor wall. The bank issued a final notice. Foreclosure proceedings began. They came to me, both of them sitting in my living room, Vivian crying real tears the only time I'd ever seen them, and Earl staring at the carpet, adjusting his glasses every 30 seconds. They needed $180,000. They'd pay me back. They promised. I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, they would never pay me back. Second, if I handed Vivian cash, she'd burn through it in 6 months and be right back in the same hole, except this time she'd owe me instead of the bank, and she'd resent me for it. So I did what I do for clients every single day. I bought the debt. NGH Capital approached their bank and purchased the defaulted mortgage note at a discount $143,000 for a $412,000 obligation. Standard distressed asset acquisition. The bank was happy to clear a non-performing loan off their books. My parents received a letter saying their account had been transferred to a new servicer. They didn't read the fine print. They never read anything. For 4 years, they thought the bank had simply given them an extended grace period. They thought my $3,500 monthly deposit was just a generous daughter helping with utilities and property taxes. They didn't know the deposit was going into a joint account they controlled while the actual mortgage sat completely unpaid with the entity that owned it. Me. I was their landlord, their lender, their bank. And they had no idea. I closed the laptop and stared at the dark kitchen. Tomorrow, I would end it. Not out of revenge, out of necessity. Whatever was left of the child in me who wanted her mother's love had died tonight on a cold tile floor on the raw knees of my 5-year-old daughter. The next morning, I dropped Naya at Brookfield Academy and drove to my office 22nd floor glass and steel, a view of the Atlanta skyline that I'd earned one closed deal at a time. My assistant Maya was already at her desk, a thick folder with a red confidential sticker waiting beside my coffee. The freeze went through at 7 this morning, Maya said, sitting across from me. The $3,500 auto transfer is canceled. Joint account is locked. If they try the debit card, it declines. "'Tis the filing." David submitted the notice of default to the county clerk at 8. "It's on record." She paused. "The process server can deliver the papers by Sunday." Sunday. My mother's 60th birthday. She'd been planning the party for months. 53 confirmed guests, the church choir, a catered barbecue, a photographer. The crown jewel of her social calendar. "Sunday works," I said. 5 days until my mother's birthday. 5 days until the walls came down. Maya left. I sat with my coffee watching the city below and my phone buzzed. A number from Naya's school. I picked up. "Mrs. Amara, this is Miss Patrice, Naya's teacher. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but I wanted to share something I've been noticing." "Go ahead." Whenever there's a raised voice in the classroom, even just a child being loud during recess, Naya stops whatever she's doing. She starts cleaning. She lines up the crayons. She wipes the tables. She stacks the books. A pause. She doesn't cry or act out. She just serves. And she won't say no to any request from any child, even when they're being unkind to her. "I've been teaching for 14 years, Mrs. Amara. I've seen this pattern before." The silence on the line lasted 5 seconds. It felt like 30. "Thank you, Ms. Patrice," I said. "I'm handling it." I hung up. I sat perfectly still. My daughter had been trained not by me, not by her school, but by the woman who was supposed to bake cookies with her to respond to conflict by making herself useful, by making herself small, by kneeling. At noon, David brought the foreclosure documents to my office for signature. I sat at my desk, uncapped my pen, and positioned the tip above the line. My right hand was steady. My left hand held my phone open to the only photo I had of me and my mother, where we both looked happy. I was 5 Naya's age, sitting on Vivian's lap in the backyard of the old apartment, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember. Vivian's arms were wrapped around me. She looked like she meant it. Was there ever a moment she actually loved me, or was even this photo a performance? I signed. I put the cap back on the pen. I turned the phone face down on the desk. 5 days. Thursday morning, my father called. He wanted to meet for coffee, just the two of us. I knew it was a trap. I went anyway. My father said just the two of us. When I walked into the coffee shop, all 4 of them were sitting in the back booth. The place was an upscale cafe in Midtown, exposed brick pendant lighting the smell of fresh espresso. The kind of spot where young professionals took laptop meetings and first dates ordered oat milk lattes. Not the kind of place where a family ambush should happen, but my family had never been good at reading rooms. Earl sat closest to the wall, already shrinking into himself, adjusting his glasses with both hands. Vivian was beside him wearing her Sunday church hat on a Thursday afternoon, a power move, as if the hat conferred some kind of moral authority. Denise was scrolling her phone, barely looking up. And Derek had actually put on a button-down shirt, though he'd missed a button near the collar, and the sleeves were rolled unevenly. He was leaning forward with both elbows on the table, radiating the energy of a man who believed he was about to close a deal. I didn't sit immediately. I looked at my father. Just the two of us, Earl. He opened his mouth closed. It looked at Vivian. She took over. Sit down. We're a family. We make decisions together. I pulled out the empty chair at the end of the table. I didn't order anything. I wasn't staying long enough. I assume, I said, crossing my legs, that this is about the $3,500 that didn't clear yesterday. Nobody answered. Vivian's jaw tightened. That confirmed it. She'd already tried the debit card. Probably at the grocery store. Probably in front of someone from church. The humiliation would have been volcanic. Derek cleared his throat. He reached for a manila envelope sitting under his coffee cup and slid it across the table toward me. Actually, Amara, this is about something much bigger than a monthly deposit. This is about building generational wealth for the entire family. He opened the envelope and pulled out a multi-page legal document. Even upside down, I recognized the format immediately, a collateral pledge agreement. Not a quit-claim deed. Something worse. I've been developing a revolutionary logistics platform, Derek began. He straightened in his seat, adopting the tone of a man who'd watched too many startup pitch videos on YouTube. AI-driven, independent delivery drivers. The TAM is massive. We're talking guaranteed triple-digit returns within the first fiscal year. I said nothing. I let him keep talking. Now, to secure the initial seed capital, $200,000 from a private lending broker, we need hard collateral. Your parents have agreed to pledge their property, but the broker also requires a secondary guarantor. He tapped the document. We need you to pledge your home as additional collateral. I stared at the paper. Then I stared at Derek. You want me to mortgage my house? I said slowly. The house where my daughter sleeps. As collateral for your business loan. It's standard practice in venture capital, Derek said, completely misreading my tone as confusion rather than disbelief. See, when a house increases in value over time, that creates something called equity. It's essentially free money trapped inside the walls of the property. The lender just needs assurance that, I know what equity is, Derek. Right, but real estate law can be overwhelming if you're not accustomed to the high-stakes entrepreneurial ecosystem. He leaned closer. Let me break it down in simple terms so you actually understand what you're signing. I closed a $14 million mortgage portfolio last Tuesday, but please tell me more about free money inside walls. I looked at the document again. A collateral pledge on my personal residence securing a $200,000 loan for a man whose entire entrepreneurial career was a graveyard of burning money. The Mindset Millionaire online course. 3 students, 2 refunds, $8,000 in studio rental. The Alpha Blueprint podcast. 19 episodes, 0 sponsors, 12,000 in equipment gathering dust. The Transform Your Legacy weekend retreat, sued by attendees, 22,000 in refunds. The Premium Wellness Dropshipping Store, 1-star reviews, 18,000 in dead inventory. $60,000 in documented losses. All of it traceable dollar by dollar back to my monthly deposits. And now he wanted my home. Sign it, Vivian said. She wasn't asking. You have plenty of money. You don't need that house. Derek is going to build something real for this family. Denise had stopped scrolling. She was watching me now, her eyes doing the calculation. If I signed, she'd get a renovated kitchen by spring. Earl stared at his empty cup. I reached into my blazer and pulled out my fountain pen. Silver barrel heavy in the hand. I uncapped it slowly. Every pair of eyes locked onto my fingers. Derek exhaled. Vivian's shoulders dropped. Denise leaned forward. Even Earl looked up from his cup. They really thought I was going to sign. I let the tip of the pen hover over the signature line. The whole table stopped breathing. Derek's smirk widened. Vivian's knuckles unclenched. Denise wiped her eyes. She'd started the waterworks somewhere between generational wealth and sign it right on schedule. Earl looked like a man watching a car accident in slow motion, unable to move or speak. I held the pen there for 3 full seconds. Then I placed the cap back on the barrel and pressed down. The click echoed across the table like a snapped bone. I picked up the document with both hands. I looked Derek in the eyes, held them, didn't blink, and pulled my hands apart. The thick paper tore down the center with a clean, satisfying rip. I folded the halves together and tore again. And again. Until the collateral pledge agreement was a pile of jagged white confetti on the cafe table. I leaned forward and swept the pieces off the edge. They fluttered down onto Derek's lap, his wrinkled button down the floor around his shoes. "Go ahead and apply for that loan, Derek," I said. My voice was level, almost friendly. "Walk into your broker's office. Show him your pitch deck. Let's see exactly what happens when they run a title search on that house." Derek sat frozen scraps of paper on his thighs, his mouth half open. The confident entrepreneur was gone. In his place was a man staring at confetti and trying to remember how to form words. But Vivian didn't freeze. Vivian never froze. She combusted. She grabbed her coffee cup, ceramic still steaming, and hurled the contents across the table. The coffee hit me square across the jaw and neck. Hot, not scalding, but enough to make my skin flush red beneath my silk blouse. Brown liquid dripped from my chin onto my blazer. A woman at the next table gasped. A barista looked up from the espresso machine. I didn't flinch. I reached for the napkin dispenser, pulled out 3 brown paper napkins, and dabbed my jaw. Slowly, deliberately, the way you clean a counter, not the way you react to an attack. "You ungrateful witch!" Vivian hissed, her chest heaving. "You are dead to me. Dead. I am writing you out of the will today. I am changing the locks. You will never set foot in my house again. Writing me out of a will that contained nothing but debt. Changing the locks on a house she didn't own. Banning me from a property that my LLC would repossess in 5 days. Message received," I said. I stood up, buttoned my blazer over the coffee stain, and walked out. The click of my heels on the polished concrete floor was the only sound in the cafe. I didn't turn around. Friday morning. My office. David sat across from me, the forensic accounting folder open between us. Maya stood by the window, tablet in hand. "The full audit is done," David said. He adjusted his silver-rimmed glasses and turned to the first flagged page. 48 months of deposits. $168,000 total. 0 allocated to property taxes. 0 to homeowners insurance. 0 to any mortgage servicer, obviously, since they don't know who the servicer is. Where did it go? 2 channels. He flipped a page. Channel 1, approximately $800 per month withdrawn at high-end boutiques in the Buckhead shopping district. Cosmetics, children's designer clothing, women's accessories. That's Denise. No surprise there. Denise wore my money every day and called herself blessed on Instagram. Channel 2 is more interesting. David's voice dropped. Large cash withdrawals, wire transfers to accounts associated with offshore sports betting operations, and direct payments specific traceable to a woman named Keisha Watts. I looked up. Who? $2,000 monthly transfer to her personal account. $3,500 toward a leased BMW registered in her name. $1,400 for a furnished apartment in Buckhead. David closed the folder. "Derek has been financing an entire second life with your money, for at least 14 months. I sat with that for a moment. Derek, the man who lectured me about traditional family values, who preached about alpha provider energy, who told my daughter she needed a strong male presence, had been funneling my deposits to his girlfriend, while his wife bragged about their perfect marriage on social media. "Save that file for Sunday," I said. "There's one more thing," Maya said from the window. She turned her tablet toward me. On the screen was a video 15 seconds long, pulled from the family's shared iCloud account. Madison and Harper had filmed it on the iPad. The footage was shaky, shot from the living room sofa pointed toward the kitchen floor. Naya, on her knees. pulling the wet rag across the tile. In the background, Vivian's voice, "Scrub harder, girl, you missed the corner." And over everything, the high, cruel giggling of two children who had been taught that my daughter was entertainment. 15 seconds, that was all it would take. "Download it," I said, "and find out if my mother's party has a Bluetooth speaker." Maya nodded. "Already checked. She rented a sound system from the church." That night, I sat in my car in the driveway. Engine off. Porch light on. Naya was asleep in her car seat behind me. We'd been to the park and she'd fallen asleep on the drive home, her head tilted against her stuffed rabbit mouth slightly open. Sunday was 2 days away. The documents were filed. The evidence was compiled. The speaker system was confirmed. Everything was ready. All I had to do was show up. I put my hand on the gear shift. I could still stop this. I could unfreeze the account. Resume the deposits. Let them keep the house. Go back to being the engine, the exhaust. From the back seat, Naya stirred, murmured something in her sleep. I looked in the rearview mirror at her face, soft, peaceful, trusting. Her hands were curled around the rabbit's ears. The skin on her palms was still pink where the chemicals had been. I shifted into drive and pulled into the garage. Sunday morning, my mother's 60th birthday, 53 guests, and a folder in my attorney's briefcase that was about to end everything. 53 people were laughing in my mother's backyard. Not one of them knew the house belonged to me. I parked a block away and turned to look at Naya in the back seat. She was glowing. Yellow silk dress hair styled in double puffs with matching ribbons, white sandals that she'd picked out herself at the store. She looked nothing like the girl on the kitchen floor 5 days ago. That was the point. "Are we going to see Grandma?" she asked. A small hesitation in her voice, not fear exactly, but the careful alertness of a child who has learned to check the weather before stepping outside. "We're going to say a quick hello to some people," I said. "And I promise you, nobody is going to make you do any chores today." She smiled. I squeezed her hand and we walked up the driveway. The backyard was a production. White tent over folding tables, mason jars of sweet tea sweating in the October sun. The church choir ladies from Grace Community occupied an entire table, fanning themselves and working through plates of mac and cheese and collard greens. My aunts and uncles sat in lawn chairs beneath the oak tree. A rented sound system, 2 standing speakers connected to a Bluetooth receiver pumped old-school R&B across the freshly mowed grass. And at the center of it all, Vivian. Floral maxi dress, perfect hair receiving compliments from the pastor's wife, like a queen holding court. She was radiant. She was performing the role of her life-beloved matriarch, blessed grandmother pillar of the community. Denise stood nearby with a glass of sparkling wine, showing off the landscaping to her friends, as though she'd paid for a single blade of grass. And Derek was behind a massive Weber grill wearing an apron that said "boss" across the chest, holding tongs like a scepter, lecturing a group of older men about venture capital. "The TAM for logistics software is absolutely massive," I heard him say as I approached. "Simone and I are taking over this property as our primary corporate asset. You have to leverage family equity to build a dynasty." He was standing on my property, grilling meat bought with my money, bragging about a loan secured by a house I owned to people who would know the truth within the hour. I walked through the side gate. Naya held my hand. The ripple started with Aunt Shirley. She paused with a forkful of potato salad halfway to her mouth, nudged Uncle George, and whispered something behind her hand. George turned, saw me, and nearly choked on his drink. The whispers spread like brushfire, table to table, chair to chair, until the laughter died, and the only sounds left were the R&B from the speakers and the sizzle of fat hitting hot coals. Every eye in the yard locked onto us. Vivian turned. The color left her face in real time, a tide pulling out. Her hands clenched at her sides. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, stepping toward me, voice low enough that the pastor's wife couldn't hear. "I told you you are dead to this family. Take that child and leave before I call the police." "Loretta, wait." Uncle Ronnie materialized at her elbow, a man who'd never missed an opportunity to deliver a moral lecture. He turned to me with the heavy disappointment of a deacon addressing a wayward congregant. Your generation has no loyalty, Amara. Your parents gave you everything, and you repay them by, Ronnie, I said calmly. How's Marcus doing? I heard about the DUI last Tuesday. Third one, isn't it? Ronnie's mouth closed. He stepped back, found somewhere else to look, and didn't say another word for the rest of the afternoon. Before Vivian could relaunch her offensive, Derek appeared at her shoulder, grease-stained tongs still in hand. He put his free arm around my mother like a bodyguard protecting a client. No, he said loudly, loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. Let her stay. Vivian stared at him. What? I want her here, Loretta. Derek's smirk was back, wide, bright, bulletproof. My broker is calling any minute now to finalize the $200,000 wire. I want Amara to sit right there. He pointed to a wrought iron patio chair under the oak tree. And watch me win. I looked at him. This man who had never won anything in his life except a woman who didn't know he was paying for another one. Thank you, Derek, I said. We'd love to stay. I guided Naya to the chair, dusted it off, sat down beside her. She picked a strawberry from a fruit tray and ate it carefully, legs swinging completely unaware that the ground beneath every person in this yard was about to open up. Mrs. Coleman, the next-door neighbor, stood near the fence with a paper plate she hadn't touched. She wasn't talking to anyone. She was just watching, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, the expression of a woman who could feel something coming but couldn't name it. The R&B track faded between songs. In the gap of silence, Derek's phone rang. He pulled it from his apron pocket, looked at the screen, and his smile split his face so wide I could count his teeth from 20 feet away. It's my broker, he announced, holding the phone high in the air like a trophy. Then he did the stupidest thing he could possibly do. He put it on speaker. He turned the volume all the way up. 53 people heard every word. Kevin, my man, Derek said into the phone, one hand on the grill handle, chest inflated like a parade float. I've got you on speaker with the whole family. Tell them the wire transfer is cleared and we are officially in business. Static. A pause that lasted 2 seconds but felt like 20. Then a voice clipped, professional and completely devoid of enthusiasm. Trent, Derek, I need you to take me off speakerphone immediately. We have a highly sensitive situation regarding your application. Derek scoffed. He shot a look in my direction, a look that said, watch this, and waved his hand dismissively. Nonsense, Kevin. We're all family here. No secrets. Just confirm the $200,000 and let's celebrate. I'm advising you to take me off speaker. I'm the client, Kevin. Just give us the good news. Another pause. I could hear the broker exhale through his nose. Then, fine, your loan application is categorically denied. The word dropped into the backyard like a stone into still water. Denied. The R&B had gone silent between tracks again, perfect timing, as if the universe had cleared the stage. Derek's smile didn't fall. It froze. His brain was still buffering, still waiting for the punchline that would make this make sense. What are you talking about? His voice cracked at the edges. You told me yesterday the underwriting was a formality. Your business plan was fine, Derek, but we can't process a secured loan without valid collateral. Our legal team pulled the title search this morning. The property you listed is completely invalid. That's impossible. My in-laws own that house free and clear. They don't. The broker's patience was audibly thinning. The property is currently in Level 3 default. The primary lineholder filed a notice of default with the county clerk 3 days ago. 0 mortgage payments made to the legal owner of that debt in 48 months. The house is in active foreclosure. Vivian shoved past Derek and leaned over the phone. You listen to me, she screamed. I am the homeowner. I pay my bills. We have a joint account. My daughter sends maintenance every month. There is no default. Ma'am, I don't know what financial arrangement you think you have, but the bank hasn't owned your mortgage in 4 years. It was legally purchased by a private corporate entity, and according to county records filed this week, that entity is accelerating the debt. Full payment demanded immediately. You owe upwards of $400,000. The blood left my mother's face, not gradually all at once like someone had pulled a plug. She grabbed the edge of the patio table. Denise caught her arm. Derek was breathing through his mouth, his eyes darting between the phone and the crowd like a cornered animal looking for an exit that didn't exist. "This is a clerical error," Derek stammered. "You have to push the loan through. I need that money. My entire business. The collateral is toxic, Derek. You can't take out a secondary mortgage on a house that's being seized by its rightful owner. Our professional relationship is terminated. Don't call this office again." The line went dead. The phone slipped from Derek's hand and hit the wooden deck with a crack. Nobody picked it up. Silence. Total suffocating silence. On the grill behind Derek, the meat was burning. Fat dripped onto coals and caught fire, sending thin black ribbons of smoke curling into the October sky. The sizzle was the only sound, a slow, steady hiss like air leaking from something that would never be inflated again. Aunt Shirley stood frozen with a chicken wing suspended in midair. Uncle George's mouth was open. The church choir ladies had stopped fanning. The pastor's wife was gripping her husband's arm. Mrs. Coleman by the fence pressed one hand flat against her chest and slowly shook her head. The call lasted 91 seconds. That's all it took to demolish 30 years of pretending. Vivian's eyes swept the patio. The shocked faces, the dropped forks, the whispered judgments already forming behind cupped hands. Then her gaze found me. I was sitting in the wrought iron chair, Naya on my lap, stroking my daughter's hair while she finished her strawberry. For the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen in my mother's eyes. Fear. Then the side gate opened, and a man in a charcoal suit walked across the grass carrying a black briefcase. David opened his briefcase on my mother's patio table. Inside were 4 years of truth. He moved with the calm efficiency of a man who had done this 100 times, which he had because I'd hired him to do exactly this for my clients' foreclosures. Charcoal suit, silver-rimmed glasses, leather shoes that clicked once on the deck before settling into position. Behind him, 4 men in dark suits fanned out across the patio in a quiet semicircle. Private security. I'd called them that morning. Derek saw the suits and took a full step backward. Vivian's hand was still gripping the patio table. Denise had gone completely still, her sparkling wine tilting in her hand forgotten. David pulled a thick document from the briefcase and held it up. Bold black letters across the front page. Official notice of foreclosure and demand for immediate vacation of premises. Derek Hayes. David said, his voice carrying easily across the silent yard. "You are officially served." He set the document on the table. Not dramatically, just placed it down the way you'd set a napkin beside a plate. The restraint was more devastating than any gesture. "That's the foreclosure notice," I said. I stood up, slowly lifting Naya onto my hip. "But before anyone starts screaming about mistakes, let me save us all some time." I looked at my mother. "Read the name of the entity that owns your mortgage. Page 2. Second paragraph." Vivian's hands were shaking so hard the pages rattled against each other. She flipped to the second sheet, her eyes scanning the dense legal text. Her lips moved. No sound came out. The document slipped from her fingers and scattered across the deck. "Since my mother seems to have lost her voice," I said, addressing the 53 people staring at me from the lawn, the tables, the folding chairs. "I'll read it myself. The primary line holder, the sole legal owner of this property, is Naya Grace Holdings, LLC." I paused. Let the name settle into the air. I named the company after my daughter. I looked down at Naya, who was resting her head against my shoulder, watching a butterfly cross the yard. "The same little girl you put on her knees to scrub your kitchen floor." The gasp from the crowd wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, a collective intake of breath, the sound of 53 people recalculating everything they thought they knew about this family. "Ba Gloria," Vivian's closest church friend, The woman who'd co-chaired every bake sale and prayer breakfast for 15 years slowly reached under her chair, picked up her purse, and stood. She didn't say a word, didn't look at Vivian. She just walked toward the gate, her low heels clicking on the concrete, and disappeared around the side of the house. She was the first. She wouldn't be the last. That's a lie, Vivian whispered. Then louder. That is a lie. I never made that child do anything. She wanted to help. She volunteered. I took my phone from my pocket. I'd already connected to the rented Bluetooth speakers during Derek's broker call paired, while everyone was too shocked to notice. I opened the video file. Pressed play. The speakers crackled once, then filled the backyard with sound. Naya's small knees on the tile, the wet rag dragging. Vivian's voice sharp and clear. Scrub harder, girl. You missed the corner. And over everything, Madison's giggle, Harper's whisper. She's so slow. Look at her. 15 seconds. The video was 15 seconds long. It played to the end and stopped, and the silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the ice shifting in someone's abandoned glass of sweet tea. The pastor's wife stood up, took her husband's arm, and left without a word. 2 of Vivian's choir friends followed, then a neighbor, then another. The exodus was quiet and steady, like air leaving a room. Vivian opened her mouth, but David was already moving. He stepped forward with the forensic folder, the one Maya and I had assembled over the past 48 hours. I'll keep this brief, David said, addressing no one in particular and everyone at once. Over 4 years, my client deposited $168,000 into a joint account designated for property maintenance. The full audit shows $0 allocated to taxes, insurance, or mortgage. The funds were diverted into 2 channels. He didn't look at Denise, but everyone else did. Channel 1, approximately $800 per month in purchases at Buckhead boutiques. Designer clothing, cosmetics, children's accessories. Denise's face went white. She looked down at her outfit, the silk blouse, the gold bracelet, and for the first time seemed to understand that she was wearing evidence. Channel 2. David continued, and now he turned to Derek. Monthly wire transfers to an individual named Keisha Watts, $2,000 to her personal account, $3,500 toward a BMW lease registered in her name, $1,400 for a furnished apartment in Buckhead. The name landed like a slap. Denise's head snapped toward Derek. Her mouth formed the word before her voice caught up. Who is she? Derek didn't answer. His face had gone the color of old concrete. Who is she, Derek? Baby, I can. It's not what those were business expenses for. You told me those transfers were for developers. Denise's voice was climbing, cracking, shedding its composure like dead skin. You told me you were paying coders in Lagos. You were paying a woman with her money. She pointed at me when she said it. Her money. Not even in the middle of her own unraveling could she say Amara's name. I was still just the source, the well, the account number. Derek took a step back. Then another. His eyes were doing the math. The loan denied, the house foreclosed. The mistress exposed 50 witnesses, 4 security guards, and a forensic accounting file that could put him in federal prison. He had no moves left. And because Derek had never in his life responded to powerlessness with anything other than aggression, he lunged. He came at me fast, not smart, just fast. One of the security contractors caught his arm mid-stride, twisted it behind his back, and put him on his knees in a single fluid motion. Derek's cheek hit the deck. His free hand slapped the wood. A sound came out of him, not a word, just a raw animal grunt of someone whose body had arrived at a truth his mind still refused. He was kneeling, right there on the patio, knees on hard ground, hands flat on the surface. The same position, the same posture, the exact same helplessness my 5-year-old daughter had been in 6 days ago, except Naya had been silent, and Derek was gasping. I looked down at him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I am your bank, and your lease just expired. If you're still listening, and I think you are, hit subscribe. Because the fallout was worse than the explosion. My mother dropped to her knees on the grass. The same knees. The same ground. The irony wrote itself. Her floral maxi dress pooled around her on the lawn. Her church hat tilted sideways. The woman who had demanded my submission for 34 years, who had called me ungrateful and bitter and dead to her, that woman was kneeling in front of 50 witnesses reaching toward me with trembling hands. Amara. Her voice cracked on the second syllable. My brilliant daughter. You've always been my golden girl, the smart one. Please, you can't do this to your own mother. I looked at her. I felt the words land brilliant daughter, golden girl, and I waited for something inside me to move. Some old stubborn root of hope. Some reflex left over from the child who used to practice piano for hours because Vivian once said she liked the sound. Nothing moved. The root was dead. An hour ago I was a bitter witch, I said. Don't try the loving mother act now, Vivian. It insults my intelligence. I was angry. I didn't mean it. You know how I get, I was just protecting the family. We'll change. Derek will get a real job. We'll pay you back every penny, I swear on my life. You swore on your life 4 years ago. Then you spent my money on Denise's wardrobe and Derek's girlfriend. Vivian flinched like I'd struck her. Behind her, Denise was making her final play. She'd disappeared into the house and now came back through the sliding glass door pulling Madison and Harper by their wrists. The girls looked terrified, mascara-streaked grandmother on the lawn, father pinned to the deck by a man in a suit. Strangers everywhere. Denise pushed them forward, positioning them directly in front of me. A human shield. The oldest trick in the narcissist's playbook. Look at them, Amara. Denise's voice was ragged, stripped of its usual polish. Look at your own nieces. Are you going to make these little girls homeless? You're a mother. How can you be this heartless? I looked at Madison and Harper. They were wearing the matching boutique dresses, the ones bought with my deposits. Harper was clutching her iPad, the same iPad that had recorded my daughter on her knees. They didn't understand what was happening. They didn't deserve any of this. But they were not my responsibility. I pulled Naya closer against my shoulder. Don't use your children to manipulate me, Denise. You and Derek are their parents. You chose to spend $168,000 on designer clothes and a secret girlfriend. If your daughters don't have a bed next week, that is your failure as a mother. Not mine. I held her gaze. I am done setting myself on fire to keep your family warm. Denise recoiled. She pulled the girls back against her chest and broke not the theatrical crying she performed on command, but ugly heaving sobs that bent her double. The sound was raw. For the first time in 31 years, my sister's tears were real. I knew because real tears made her look terrible, and she didn't try to fix it. David stepped past them and walked to my father. Earl was standing near the back door where he'd been the entire time, not helping, not speaking, not choosing a side, because choosing a side would have required him to be something other than furniture. David handed him a single sheet of paper. 7 days to vacate the premises, David said. Because this property was acquired in a state of default, the standard 30-day cure period does not apply. Earl took the paper with both hands. He read it slowly. Then he looked at me with the watery, helpless eyes of a man who had spent his entire life avoiding exactly this moment. Where are we supposed to go, Amara? I looked at the man who had watched his wife abuse me for 3 decades, who had adjusted his glasses and stared at the floor every time Vivian drew blood, who had shuffled into his home office and closed the door while his granddaughter knelt on cold tile with chemical burns on her palms. You have 7 days to figure that out, Earl. The yard was nearly empty now. The church choir had left in a cluster, purses gathered, eyes averted. Uncle Ronnie had slipped out without a goodbye. The neighbors had collected their lawn chairs and vanished. The caterer was packing aluminum trays into a van, glancing nervously at the security team. Gloria's chair sat empty. Her untouched plate of food was still on the table, a napkin folded neatly beside it, the only sign she'd been there at all. Mrs. Coleman was the last to go. She stood by the fence for a long moment, looking at Vivian on the grass, at Derek still on his knees, at the scattered foreclosure documents lifting in the October breeze. Then she looked at me. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just pressed her lips together in a thin, firm line, the expression of a woman who had seen exactly what she expected to see, and walked away. The party was over. The grill had burned itself out, nothing left but black ash and the faint smell of char. Vivian sat alone on the grass, her hat fallen off her dress, stained with dirt at the knees. Nobody was holding her. Nobody was helping her up. I carried Naya to the car. She was asleep on my shoulder before I reached the driveway. Her breathing was slow and even against my neck, her small fingers curled into the collar of my blouse. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. They were gone in 6 days. They didn't even use the 7th. David's office sent me the confirmation on Saturday morning: property vacated, keys left on the kitchen counter, no damage to fixtures. I didn't go inside to check. I sent a contractor. The aftermath came in pieces, the way all collapses do. Vivian and Earl moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side, the kind of complex with a buzzing hallway light and a laundry room that took quarters. Earl's social security checks covered rent. Barely. Vivian, who had spent 30 years curating a public image of prosperity, now pushed a cart through the Walmart on Campbellton Road and hoped she wouldn't run into anyone from church. She did, every time. Derek's forensic file made its way to the right desks. Federal investigators opened a Casewire fraudulent loan application, undisclosed offshore accounts tied to illegal sports betting platforms he'd used to launder the gambling losses. His accounts were frozen. His LLC was dissolved. The life coach who preached about abundance mindset and alpha provider energy filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy from a studio apartment with no furniture. Denise filed for divorce before the month was out. She took Madison and Harper and moved into the only place that would have her, Vivian's 2-bedroom apartment. The golden child, the one who could do no wrong, was now sleeping on a pull-out couch in her mother's living room, her daughters sharing an air mattress on the floor. The woman who had been handed everything was now a burden on the woman who had nothing left. The house sat empty for 3 months while I decided what to do with it. I thought about selling. I thought about renting. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I drove past a women's shelter on Pryor Street and saw a mother sitting on the front steps with 2 small children and a trash bag full of clothes, waiting for a bed that might not be available. I called David the next morning. It took 4 months of permits, renovations, and nonprofit filings. We gutted the kitchen, tore out the granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances, the tile floor where my daughter had knelt. We rebuilt it as a communal dining space with long wooden tables and chairs sized for children. The bedrooms became transitional housing units. The backyard, where Derek had grilled and bragged, became a playground with a climbing wall and a garden bed. We called it Naya's house. The sign went up on a Friday. White letters on a blue background bolted to the front of the building that used to be my mother's fortress. Vivian drove past it every day on her way to the grocery store. I know because Mrs. Coleman told me, still watching from her fence, still not missing a thing. A few months after the sign went up, I was making dinner. Nothing special: pasta, jarred sauce, garlic bread from a bag. Naya was running through the kitchen in her socks, chasing the cat we'd adopted in September, a scraggly orange tabby she'd named Butterscotch. She rounded the corner too fast, hit the edge of the counter with her hip, and knocked a full glass of water off the edge. It shattered on the tile, water and glass everywhere. Naya froze. Her whole body went rigid. Her eyes dropped to the floor, then to me, then back to the floor. And before I could move, she was already sinking knees, bending hands, reaching for the mess, her face blank and automatic, the same face I'd seen in my mother's kitchen. I caught her before her knees touched the ground. I knelt down slowly, gently, so my eyes were level with hers. I took her hands in mine. They were soft now. The chemical burns had healed months ago, but I still checked. I always checked. "You don't need to clean it," I said. "You just need to be you. I'll get it." She looked at me. Her eyes were wide and uncertain, caught between the old instruction and the new one. Her fingers were still curled, still reaching for a rag that wasn't there. Then slowly she let go. Her hands relaxed. Her shoulders dropped. She didn't smile, not yet, but something behind her eyes shifted like a window cracking open after being painted shut for a long time. "Can I help Butterscotch instead?" she asked. "You can do whatever you want, baby." She padded off in her socks to find the cat. I cleaned up the water and the glass, and I stood at the sink for a while looking at nothing. That night, after Naya fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen. The baby monitor glowed green on the counter. I could hear her breathing, slow, steady, the rhythm of a child who felt safe enough to sleep deeply. The house was quiet. No one called asking for money. No one called to tell me I was ungrateful. No one called at all. For the first time, I let myself cry. Not for Vivian. Not for the family I lost. For the 34 years I'd spent believing that if I just gave enough, worked enough, sacrificed enough, the woman who gave birth to me would finally turn around and see me. She never did. She never would. And the reward for accepting that wasn't joy. It was silence. Clean, whole, unbroken silence, and the sound of my daughter breathing on the other side of the wall. Last week a letter arrived. My mother's handwriting on the envelope, the looping, dramatic cursive she used for church correspondence. No return address. Postmarked from the south side. She wants to see Naya for Christmas. I haven't opened it. Part of me never will. Part of me already has 100 times in my head trying to read the words through the paper, trying to hear whether this time, finally, the love is real. I put the letter in the kitchen drawer. The junk drawer, the one that won't close all the way, stuffed with batteries, takeout menus, and a broken crayon Naya used to draw a picture of our house with 2 stick figures standing in front of it. Just 2. Her and me. Some families are the ones you're born into. Some are the ones you build. And some are a 5-year-old girl and an orange cat named Butterscotch eating pasta on a Tuesday night in a house that belongs to no one but us. That's enough. That's more than enough. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever had to choose between loyalty and survival, between the family you were given and the peace you deserve, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because these stories aren't just mine. They're ours.